I'm a big college football fan, and I like to watch college game day on Saturday mornings on ESPN. And this year, they always have had a guy. Well, for the past several years, they've had a guy sitting off to the side who's not one of the main guys on camera. Um, and he, kind of handicaps the games and tells who his betting favorites are, and in a few select games of the day. For years, it was a guy whose nickname his name was Chris, but his nickname was the Bear, and he left and went on to a bigger contract with a different network this year. So they brought in a guy whose nickname is Stanford Steve. Okay, Stanford Steve. This year, this first season on game day, his pick record was 21, 33, and 2. That means he got 21 right, missed on 33, and 2 of them were pushes. Okay, that's his game day picks for the 2023 season. It's amazing to me that he still has a job. But he does a lot of other things for ESPN besides just pick or handicap some of the games on Saturday. Well, by the end of the season, everyone was watching to see who Stanford Steve would pick and just go the other way. My wife and I would sit there and just joke about it. Well, he picked so-and-so to win. I guess we should pick the other team if we were going to bet on football, which we don't. I'm happy to report that my official tally and making real estate predictions since this show started in 2017 is 23, 1, and 1. That's a pretty good record. One year, I missed the prediction of the rate of home price increase. After the pandemic began back in 2020, everyone reset their 2020 predictions, and I did too, with nearly every major service and prognosticator out there saying home prices would be down by 3 to 5% at the end of the year. I looked at the situation and applied an independent brain to it and thought to myself, a lot of the market fundamentals still remain strong. I think we're still in a strong market. So I boldly predicted a 6% increase. And I was one of the only people in America to predict an increase in real estate home values in 2020. I was wrong, but only because it was a nearly 12% increase. One of my mentoring students said, I was not just right, I was doubly right. So I don't know. Well, we put that down to a tie. That's how we get to the tie, the one tie in there. And I also predicted that the Zoom boom of 2020 would be over by 2021 and workers would be back in the office. That turned out to be incorrect, which has led to the 2023 and 24 meltdown. It's coming in my prediction section. The meltdown in the office sector, which I'm going to say more about in just a few minutes. But overall, I have a stellar record, and I'm kind of proud of it. Now, granted, real estate is much easier to predict than the performance of a bunch of college kids playing football. There are fewer variables, and also the signs are pretty easy to read if you bother to read them. What I've noticed about many of the YouTube clickbait wannabes is they don't bother to read them. They rarely look at the data, and some of them look at some data and they trot out some charts that selectively appear to support their alarming declaration that the residential market is going to crash. But they're not looking at the correct data most of the time, or in some places, they misinterpret the information right in front of them. I can't decide if they are that stupid or if it's just willfully misleading the public. I kind of think it's the second, because they're smart enough to figure out how to get lots of clicks on YouTube, so they can't be stupid, which that worries me a little bit. Well, what qualifies me to predict? Well, not just my stellar track record. It's not particularly well known that I have a master's degree in education, and part of that training included some fairly advanced courses in statistics and the research process. Now, I don't call myself an expert in the field of statistical analysis, but you know what? These stats aren't that hard. I do know how to look at the data, and more importantly, I take the time to actually do it before rendering an opinion. All right. All of that is just designed to enhance my credibility with you, to let you know that I know 2 or 3 things about what I'm talking about. So on to the predictions for 2024. Prediction number 1, mortgage rates will begin to come down by the end of the year. I've looked at a lot of the data and the markers and considered the opinions of others, and I believe that they are actually going to be lower than 7%, probably around 6.5% by the fourth quarter, by the end of 2024. Now, if you're sitting there thinking you're going to wait till they get down to 3% anytime soon, please don't. That's not going to happen. If you're waiting on that to buy a house, don't. Just buy what you can afford right now. If they do go down, you can always refinance. Okay, so there's no reason to wait. And I don't think that we're not going to see 3% rates. I didn't plan to say this, but I'm going to just tell you, I don't think we're going to see 3% rates before I retire. All right. Number 2, rental demand is going to increase this year, particularly in the single family sector. I saw an interesting thing from John Burns research, and I linked it in today's show notes, by the way, where they were comparing apartments, build to rent, and single family rentals, existing single family rentals. And the single family rentals were the least volatile of those three. And they had an interesting little trend line. I didn't think that story was necessarily that big of a story, but what's happening is the demand for rental houses is continuing to increase because there are still families that want to live in a house. But right now, on average, the payment for a mortgage is, for the same house is about $1,000 more per month than it would cost just to rent it. That's just the payment. That doesn't include taxes, insurance, maintenance, and repairs, all of those things that really add up the cost of home ownership. So I'm predicting that there's going to be a strong demand for rentals. Are you paying attention, all of you single-family rental investors? Yeah, hopefully that would get your attention. Now, number 3, this should also get your attention if maybe you don't want to own single family. The first half of 2024 is going to be the best time in our lifetime to buy office space. This is a result of the high vacancy rates that have happened since 2020. The average vacancy rate in office buildings across the sector in 2023 was 19.2%. Now, we are predicting that it's going to begin to come back in 25 to 26, not 24. Some think it will be back to 24. I don't think so. 25 to 26, it's going to be back. So this is a long play, but it's potentially the most lucrative opportunity since the single-family home crash of 2008. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It is lucrative if you have a lot of money, if you have cash to put into this, and you have a long window where you could sit on these properties and gradually build up your occupancy rate. There's a lot of zeros involved in these deals, a lot more than a single family home. And so it takes fewer deals to actually add up to a pretty lucrative take. So just keep this in mind. You heard it here on the Flipping America show. First half of 2024 is the best time in a long time to buy office space. Go get some. Number 4, the Nar Lawsuit, which ended October the 31st, 2023, won't actually be over for at least a couple of years. Nar, Keller Williams, and Home Services of America are planning to appeal, and that's going to take a couple of years at least. And the only people who are ever going to get rich from this are the lawyers bringing the class action suits. The people in Missouri who are part of the class, those people may get $100 when it's all over with 2 or 3 years from now. There are actually 3 lawsuits going. A lot of people don't know this. There are 3 lawsuits that have been filed, and only one of them has been tried. That one is called the Sitzer-Burnett. There's another one called Morrill, and Morrill, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Moerhl. Morrill goes to trial in 2024, seeking damages as high as, are you ready for this? $40 billion. But Gibson, the third suit, is the Nar killer. It's seeking $200 billion and includes Redfin, Douglas Elliman, and Compass. Okay. In this whole thing, now I thought about doing an entire episode just on the Nar lawsuit, but I thought, you know what? The end result is not going to be that much different, with a few little caveats that I'm going to mention right now. And I in the end, decided it wasn't worth an entire episode. One thing is clear. What happens with agent commissions in the future is completely unclear. That's one thing that we know. We don't really know what's going to happen with agent commissions. It may get down to the point where it's individually negotiated, and some agents don't want to work for less than what they're already making. And, you know, I don't want to be too hard on the agents. I've been a big supporter of agents, and I use agents all the time. I have a network of agents that I work with across the country, and I respect what they do. It's not necessarily easy. And people say, well, with the internet and everything, who needs agents anymore? Listen, agents don't earn their money by listing your property or by showing you a property. They earn their money. They really earn their money once it goes under contract and to get it from contract to closing. That's when an agent earns their money, and it's worth it because this is a complicated process. Now, that's a good segue into my second point here. The consumer real estate buying and selling game is going to be the wild, wild west for a little while. And a lot of innocent people are going to be damaged because this is a complicated transaction. The process, the terminology, everything that's involved in the borrowing and the lending. I don't want to see people hurt. And I've given some thought to this. What happens is if there's an agent for the buyer and an agent for the seller, they are in this all day, every day. They know the terminology and they are acting in the best interest of their client, and they're protecting them. They're explaining things to them and they're helping them. And without that piece in there, some sophisticated actors are going to take advantage of unsophisticated consumers, and people are going to get hurt. That's going to happen. But you know what? The more I think about it, the more I think that's the way it is with capitalism. So we either have capitalism and free market where people who don't know or don't bother to know or don't take responsibility for their lives, they end up getting taken advantage of. And that happens up to a point, and then people start paying attention. They grow up, they take responsibility, and they learn how to protect themselves. So in the end, I'm not rooting for anybody to get hurt. I don't want anybody to be damaged. And I think some people are going to be because they don't know what they're getting themselves into when they use one of these flat fee agencies that not only doesn't answer the phone, they don't have a phone. You can only correspond with them through the internet. Oh boy, it's going to be the wild, wild west for a little while. And but I think at some point, responsible individuals who want to own a home will invest in themselves enough to know what they need to know to protect themselves. And in the end, we'll be in a better place. Next point, still under the Nar lawsuit. Innovative and truly helpful ideas will be rewarded in the marketplace. So those of you out there that, you have a little creative element to you, the secret to entrepreneurship is to find a need and fill it. What are the needs that are going to be out there as a result of the Nar lawsuit and this changing and the uncertainty? There are going to be needs. And if you can fill those needs in a truly helpful way, there will be rewards for you. All right. Next item. This is the fourth item under the Nar lawsuit. There's going to be a shakeout of realtors. Many incompetent people will wash out, just like in the 2008 crisis. Realtors are going to have to adjust. They're going to have to do a better job of selling themselves and explaining why they need to exist, making a case for themselves. And those that can will do okay. And those that cannot will be gone. And that will be a pretty substantial number, I predict. And the next point. The end result of this entire Nar lawsuit is it's going to look a lot like it does today. There will be buyer and seller agents. Even with the internet and everything, most people don't want to learn everything there is about all of the contingencies and the inspection periods and the so forth and in this complicated process. But so there's going to be seller agents and there's going to be buying agents, but possibly a more educated consumer class in the middle of all of this. And I think that'll be a good thing. All right, big prediction number 5. I'm done with the Nar lawsuit now. This one is almost too easy. I almost didn't put it in here, but I need to say it because one thing, it'll help my record. The population is going to continue to shift away from the Northeast and the West Coast toward the South and the Southwest. There's this thing about Americans and that is the word freedom. Most of us have been brought up with the idea that freedom is a good thing and it's to be cherished. And the more government intrudes into our lives, the less we want that government to be a part of our lives. And I think that the demographics can only partly be explained by government intrusion. I think it could be more fully explained by government taxation. You see, when the government intrudes into lives, the enforcement of that takes money. And so how can they come up with the money they need to enforce the ridiculous things that they want to put on their people? They raise taxes. And so people are basically fleeing high tax states and going to low tax states. Now, before you pack up and move to Florida, let me just tell you, Florida's a great place, nothing against it. And there's no income tax there. There's no state income tax. You have federal, but there's no state income tax in Florida. However, their property taxes there are something to behold. Just keep that in mind. All right, number 6, and this is my last prediction, and of course this is one we do every year. What's going to happen with home prices? Okay, I'm going out on a limb here again. I'm predicting that home prices will continue to rise, but will be only up about 3% in 2024. Most of the experts out there are saying that prices are going to actually decrease or remain flat. But I made a note when I was doing my research. These are the same experts who've been saying that since 2020. Since then, home prices have increased almost 40% across the country. All right, there you have it, my friends. Here's hoping your 2024 is the best year yet.